morning, everybody. Welcome to the Winds, Water, and Wildfires Summit for the West, hosted by the National Association of Conservation Districts. My name is Ann Walker, and I am your facilitator for today, and also the Wildfire Program Coordinator for the NACD. It is my pleasure to be here today and to walk us through our day full of exciting speakers and examples of where conservation districts are actively engaging with local communities and working on the goals of the cohesive strategy. They may not know that's what we're calling it, but several years ago, the National Wildland Fire Management Strategy was written by a group of 13 folks in Emmitsburg. And there really were a lot of conflicts between organizations and fighting fire, and we really had to get on the same page. The budgets were, being just, the suppression costs were just eating our lunch, basically. And we needed to do something about it. So the goals of the cohesive strategy really pull everybody together, all the agencies working on wildfire, but they actually go broader than that to preparedness for communities. First goal is fire adapted communities. We have resilient landscapes, or restoring and maintaining resilient landscapes, and also safe and effective wildfire response. We're going to learn about that today, and we're going to learn about how the local communities, the local conservation districts are really working with folks on the ground to implement those goals. So I know that a lot of folks are not familiar with it. In the email that I sent out today, you have a link to it. To the foundational documents, and we'll hear more in the agenda from Katie about what the Regional Strategy Committee is doing right now. With that, I would like to turn it over to Michael Crowder if he is on.
Michael's having some difficulty.
Go through the housekeeping real quick.
Michael's having some difficulty. If you can
okay.
Maybe pivot. Thank you.
Okay, I got it. So make sure everybody knows on the first thing, we are recording this, so you will be able to get back to look at other sessions or to catch up, and you want to listen to the Cohesive Strategy 101 again to get a little more information about it. Please keep your microphones on mute, and because we are recording this, none of the wonky stuff in the cameras. It'll be recorded. That includes me. And I hope everyone got the reminder email that has the most up-to-date event agenda. And there's also links to bios. And if you want to know information about the speakers and such, that'll be online as well. I really, really want to encourage folks to ask questions in chat. There's a Q&A session at the end of each of our panels. And after the cohesive strategy, I really, really want folks to engage in. We'll be highlighting actions that really touch on accelerating the goals of the cohesive strategy. And it's going to take all of us. This may be a strategy that has fire in the name, but it goes well beyond that to wind events, devastating wind events. And recently where I live in Oregon, we've had the ice storms, just like in Oklahoma in October last year. There was horrible ice storms that now created a lot of limbs and forest fuels on the ground that are going to kind of set ourselves up for another year of this fire problem that we're dealing with. So please be sure to put questions in the chat, and we'll be sure to monitor those. We have 1 second, sorry about that. And if Michael is not on mic, can we go ahead and go to Chris French?
I think he just joined us.
Okay, perfect timing. Hey, good morning, Michael.
Sorry about that. My computer was fighting against me this morning. Sorry.
Uh-oh. Well, you are up. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all for having us and joining us here today. I'm sorry I missed the first few minutes, but I want to welcome you. Here at the districts, we're very happy to say that we represent 17,000 supervisors and 3,000 districts in nearly every county in 50 states and 7 territories. So a lot of folks that we represent. A lot of good producers on the ground, and very happy to lead this organization. And I see a lot of friendly faces on here already and names. But my name is Michael Crowder. I'm originally from Southern Indiana. Now I live in Eastern Washington State. And right now we are at 0.00 rain for the springtime. So wildfire is literally never off my mind. It is so intensely dry here. We had a wildfire evacuation 2 weeks ago, which just shouldn't happen in April. So these are timely issues that most of us are dealing with, and essentially everybody in the West are dealing with. I've 3 times watched fire bombers and helicopters from my front porch putting out fires here. So I completely get it. I am all in the camp here of better forestry management and preparation for this, and I'm excited to participate through the day. So I just want to welcome everybody again, and if there's anything specifically you'd like for me to address, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, that sounds great, Michael. You know, we had a recent evacuation I think it was last week as well, in rural metro Oregon City area. And,
Yep.
you know, people are not prepared to have this happen, you know, in April, much less, you know, even in the summer. They really don't think it's going to happen to them. So we do need to work with our communities to understand how to be ready for fire or any type of event. We saw that with Ready, Set, Go in the Labor Day fires. You know, a lot of people don't understand that really when it says ready, set. If you're ready to leave it set, you should be going. The evacuation problems are a problem, but definitely some room to improve on that. And I think conservation districts are really, really strategically placed in local communities that they can make a difference. Yeah,
I've participated in the wildfire programs, Fireways here with our district, and we actually have a specific fire plan for my ranch with our local district. So depending on which way is the wind coming, we have a plan, because we have big equipment and dozers if we need to cut fire lines on our ranch. We have those plans ahead of time. So that's the kind of stuff that I would encourage all landowners to do, and not just private, federal, and most do that I've worked with, but that it's really important.
Very good. Thank you,
Thank
Michael.
you. Thank you.
With that, I'll turn it over to Chris French.
Sam,
Good morning.
can you hear me okay, Ann?
Yes.
Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Chris French, and I am the acting deputy undersecretary here at USDA, at the United States Department of Agriculture. It's a real pleasure to be with you today, and this summit is critical and important. For those of you that, my normal day job is I'm the deputy chief at the Forest Service that oversees the policy and management of our national forest systems, but I'm also an active conservationist on my own lands. And I recognize, as we were just talking about, that the crisis that's in front of us, that it is imperative that all of us are taking on how to address it. So I think you all know we're expecting another record-setting fire season. You know, we've gotten to a place now where we talk about our fire seasons being year-round, and that when we look at the trajectories of what is occurring, both in our forests, but as much as well to our communities and the services that our lands and forests provide to those communities, like clean water, the scope of impacts just dramatically increases every year. Wildfires are occurring across the entire country, from Florida to Alaska, Tennessee, Oregon, Colorado, Washington, everything in between. Places that we didn't think would necessarily burn in the ways they are. I mean, that's our new reality. And it comes from a space of, honestly, suppressing fires for 100 years in forests that naturally had fire in them, the growth of our communities, and climate change. You know, we're seeing high wind events, record-setting hot, cold temperatures, much longer hot temperatures throughout the year. That it contributes to that year-round that year-round fire season I talked about. And so, you know, our communities that are part of these forests and those landscapes are suffering like no other time we've seen. So it's imperative that we act now, and that's the importance of a summit like this, because what we're realizing when we work with our scientists about how do you address this is that we've got this window, we've got this time right now where we have to start to deal with this issue at the scale that it's coming to us. We have to operate in larger, big ways. We have to work together across the matrix of lands to the implementation of the cohesive strategy and to the National Wildland Fire Management Strategy. And there's three goals in that strategy: building resilient landscapes, improving our responses to fires, and as importantly, establishing fire adapted and disaster resilient communities. And that is not only the communities themselves, but the matrix of lands that are a part of that. So we know that it's critical for us to build upon the good work we've been doing and then think boldly and differently about where we're going. And for us, and the way that we talk about this is just very much increasing by 2 to 3 times what we're doing right now. The only way we do that is through successful partnerships like through the conservation districts, because this issue, it's not just a federal and state issue, it's a local, and it occurs on private lands as well. And you're that key conservation partner to work in that matrix between all of that. You create that solution. So I appreciate the work that you do with all the federal agencies, with the NRCS, with the Forest Service. And I recognize that partnership going forward has to expand. We have to do more, and we're actively working with Congress and the administration to talk about that. In addition to wildfire, we're seeing other things. I mean, the drought we were just talking about, it's creating this increased forest health and rangeland crisis. Large areas of these areas are in need of restoration. That restoration, honestly, is outpacing our budgets and our capacity. And when we look at our ability to restore lands, especially from wildfire, floods, wind events, I'll just take wildfire, for example. I know our agency just on National Forest System lands is able to keep up with about 8% of the total reforestation needed after these fires. So I'm really committed to create a change there. I'm really committed both in the actions of the federal family and the agencies, but also the resources we advocate for, and opening ourselves to partnerships to change that. And I know you are too, by the work that you do through our conservation districts. We all have to do our part, and no longer can any one of us look at this as just our agency going alone. As landowners, as land managers, what's imperative right now is to reach out, work collaboratively together, and to educate others about thinking about what that next inevitable event looks like. We know that the costs of recovery are so much higher than the cost of preparation. And that's the part where we have to think about who's not coming to the table right now. Who is not a part of these important discussions that you're helping lead, and bring those people to the table. We need more folks planning with us and partnering us in our communities to build together that increased capacity to help overcome this before there's the time when everybody comes together and respond to an emergency. So I know wildfires, climate change, it's impacting all of us, all of our towns and communities across every landscape. If there's one thing I leave you with is ask yourself, who else can we be helping bring to the table to help solve this, to reduce risk, to increase risk mitigation, and think about how do you create a community landscape interface that's resilient. So I thank you for this invitation today to address the districts. It's an imperative time. And I really hope that through the dialogues today, that you walk away with an inspired vision of what you can help lead in your community. So in association with the National Association Conservation Districts, I want to say to all of you, welcome. to this Winds, Water, and Wildfire Summit. I'm really looking forward to the dialogues. Thanks, Ann.
You're welcome, and thank you very much, Chris. You absolutely nailed it as far as this is a broader scope than fire, even though fire is in the name. And those events, I've seen winds, high winds do so many damaging things. And, the more that we can do to recognize that, steps we need to take to get ahead of it and prepare our folks in our communities, the better we will be, I think. I like your question about who else needs to come to the table, and I'll definitely share that, again, after we do our introductions. And if you can stick around, that would be great. We'd love to open it up and ask if folks have questions for you.
Well, thanks, Ann.
You're welcome. With that, I will turn it over to Mike Hinn.
Good morning, Ann. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, Michael Hinn here. I'm the district manager for Sublette County Conservation District located in Southwest Wyoming, and co-sponsor with Teton County Teton Conservation District on this event. I'd like to welcome everyone to it. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic last year, we had to cancel, and we're doing it virtually this year. We had a really awesome tour set up to show everybody on the ground projects that both conservation districts have done. And like Chris said, wildfires have changed. I've been a wildland firefighter coming on 21 seasons this year, and have known and have seen things change over time. Burning earlier, like Michael said, with an April evacuation, to burning later in the year, and burning fires are behaving differently, and we're approaching how to combat them differently in my career. So with that, I look forward to a very good summit, and I'll explain later in the program a little bit about my district and what we do in our neck of the woods. So I'll turn it back over to Ann. Thanks to everybody for attending.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Mike. Rob, would you like to go ahead?
Good morning, Ann. Real pleasure to be here. On behalf of Teton Conservation District, just thank you for the opportunity to have participated in this summit. Again, my name is Rob Scroy, Land Resources Specialist with the Teton Conservation District. Our district is one of 34 in the state of Wyoming. We're in the northwest corner with area that covers Grand Teton National Park, part of the Bridger Teton National Forest, part of Yellowstone National Park, as well as private lands. We're a 7-employee conservation district with a 5-person locally elected decision-making board of supervisors, as well as 4 appointed associate members, all who volunteer and contribute a tremendous amount of time and expertise to our programs. My responsibilities are actually split amongst administering several programs, from air quality monitoring to agricultural support, grants management, natural resource review of effects on natural resources to proposed development, and of course, wildfire risk reduction. Part of my background is just as a certified arborist through the International Society of Arboriculture, then a certified wildfire mitigation specialist through the National Fire Protection Association. And then I'm also, I've had the great opportunity to serve as the vice chair for our local wildfire coalition, the Teton Area Wildfire Protection Coalition, which we'll talk about a little bit more in the first panel. Our district's had the pleasure to develop and administer a wildfire risk reduction program that we've actively worked on since 2013. And this has put us in contact with literally hundreds of landowners to advise them on wildfire risk reduction. And it's also been a unique avenue for broader discussion on natural resources. So I'm really an on-the-ground employee with an emphasis on direct contact with landowners within our district, and appreciate the chance to be here. Thank you, Ann.
You're welcome, and thank you very much, Rob, for explaining all the different programs and things that you do. In my work with the cohesive strategy over the last several years and co-authoring it, we talked about conservation districts, but I can tell you, even recently, a lot don't know what you do. You really are on the land with the landowners, helping them with anything that they need, and that's a very broad basket of things. So I really appreciate that detail. All right, now we'll turn over to our NACD region reps, Ariel Rivers. Go ahead. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. So as Ann mentioned, my name is Ariel Rivers, and I'm a staff member with the National Association of Conservation Districts. As your Pacific region representative, I support districts throughout California, where I am currently based, as well as Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Hawaii, Alaska, and several overseas territories. And part of my role is supporting districts in their education partnership and advocacy efforts. So we've already heard the question from Chris in terms of who else needs to come to the table, but who else needs to hear these stories, and how can myself and the rest of the association help spread the good word of the work that you're doing so we can get those people to the table. So thank you again for joining us. I look forward to a variety of great conversations, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions at any time. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Ariel. And Rachel from Colorado.
Hi, everyone, and thanks so much for tuning in to the webinar. My name is Rachel Thieler, and I'm the Southwest region rep for NACD. So I support Wyoming, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado. And I live in Buena Vista, Colorado. And before coming to work for NACD 6 weeks ago, I worked for the Colorado State Conservation Board, which guides Colorado's 76 conservation districts. And I was with them for 6 years, and it was during my time with them that I really learned what superheroes districts are, because they really are the grassroots conservation in their communities, but because of the way they were created, they have access to this really great national network. And on a personal note, wildfire is really near and dear to my heart, because I actually fought fire for the Forest Service in college, which was how I met my husband, who was a smoke jumper out of Missoula. And we actually met on a fire. So very excited to be joining you all with this topic. And I'll be moderating panel 3, and I really look forward to the conversation that we'll be having this afternoon as well. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you very much, Rachel. With that, we'll move down into our Forestry Resource Policy Group reps. Steve Hitstrom, go ahead.
Yeah, Steve Hitstrom. I'm actually from central Montana. My wife and I run a cow-calf operation up here for the last 40-some years, but I've been a conservation district supervisor probably 35 years. I represent Montana on the NACD board, where I currently chair the Forestry RPG. Just represented the conservation districts on the Montana Forest Action Plan this last fall, which we completed. Been a county fire chief for the last 25 years. So I have been on the line, and I'm very concerned about the frequency and intensity of these fires anymore. Montana is in a 12-month fire season anymore. So it's getting very critical that we take and get something figured out. With that, thank you much.
Thank you, Steve. Very good points there. Doug Rushton, Washington.
Good morning. I'm Doug Rushton from Washington State, the Thurston Conservation District, which is at the south end of Puget Sound. I'm a certified forester, and looking back over my career, I got a free tour of the Western United States compliments of the Forest Service, going to various fires all over the place. And welcome to the Pacific region. I was elected chair of the Pacific region. I get to work with Ariel quite a bit, so welcome to the Pacific region. I would like to urge folks to think broadly too. It's not just the stuff on the ground. I'd encourage talking with your legislature, your congressional delegation, your agency decision makers, tribes, and others, because sooner or later you're going to need their ears. So I'd urge engaging them early on and establish those relationships so you can maybe make it easier down the road. But again, welcome.
Thank you, Doug, my neighbor to the north. And next is Katie Lighthall. Go ahead, Kate. There you go.
Here we go. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. I am the Western Regional Manager / Coordinator for the Wildland Fire Leadership Council. We'll talk a little bit more about that in our Cohesive Strategy 101. But my job is primarily to connect the dots in the context of the cohesive strategy between stakeholders, including conservation districts, and helping different stakeholders find their place, because as has been said already this morning, it does take all of us. And now with the increased interest at the national level, we're going to put the cohesive strategy to the test and really invest in how we can make some meaningful progress towards those 3 goals that Ann mentioned. So thank you for the opportunity, Ann.
Thank you, Katie. And my apologies, Keith Bartholomew. I don't know how I skipped right over you.
I was hoping that I wouldn't have to do this, but my
That
name's
might have
Keith
been
Bartholomew. My name's Keith Bartholomew. I ranch in southeast North Dakota with my son on the edge of the Cheyenne National Grassland. And I'm one of the newest members on the forestry RP&G. I'm the supervisor from the Ransom County Conservation District, and happy to learn what about wildfires. It hit kind of close to home. We did have, North Dakota has had the greatest, I just read yesterday, the greatest amount of acres, the most wildfires we've had in April ever. And one was about an 8,000 acre one was 17 miles south of our place here and burned to about a half a mile from a small village in the middle of the grassland. So it's near to all of our hearts, and even it's hitting in the plains. I'm on the state board, and I represent the northern plains region on the RPG. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Keith. And again, my sincere apologies for skipping over you. They say those flyover states, that happens sometimes. Like, didn't mean to. All right. So we have a little bit of time left, just a couple of minutes for questions. And Chris, are you still with us? And Michael, yes.
I am.
All right. So you had said who else needs to come to the table, and the connection that Katie has with the committee under the Wildland Fire Leadership Council. How do you see conservation districts fitting in this picture? Should they engage with the committees? How do they from their offices, where there may be one person in their office, really make a step forward to engage in what we're talking about?
Well, I do think that's a natural place, especially at national and regional levels. Here's what I watch often. So let me I'll put it this way. We know now when we've had our scientists and others look at the fire modeling, especially after the last few fire seasons, is that these areas that we call them fire sheds, there's a certain amount of them that are posing the most risk to communities. But when you look at the landscapes within those, it really is this matrix of lands that have to be thinned, that have to be restored. And it's not just anyone's issue. It's not just a Forest Service or a BLM or a state natural resources department issue. There is this broader matrix. And this is where I think conservation districts have been probably one of the most effective partners we've seen. Especially when I look at things that we've done, which are like these they're called Joint Chiefs projects, and with NRCS, where the conservation districts become this really incredible partner. It is the one place where we see trust built about addressing the issue that sometimes isn't held with the federal government, but we are getting work done in a broader way across the whole ownership of lands to actually reduce wildfire risk. There's some examples that just came in to us, showing to us in Colorado, where you could see this clear work of the conservation districts that were instrumental in actually reducing some of the impacts of fire sizes last year, along with the state and federal action. So that's what I'm talking about. And I think we have to get better at reaching out and talking with conservation districts to look for those areas of partnership and help provide resources and funding. But I'd also say to all of you, being engaged and realizing how much you are a part of the solution. I think that's critical right now too.
Thank you. Did you have anything to add on that?
And are you talking to me, Michael? Yeah, with good neighbor authority and our work with the Joint Chiefs, it's going to take everybody. Like Chris said, the fire doesn't stop at the fence, so it doesn't care if it's private or federal or state. So we have to work together. And I've worked a little bit with the forestry RPG, and I'm still learning some of these issues, but I'm really proud of the work that they're doing, and that they're representing us well with the federal government through the Joint Chiefs program.
Sounds good. Katie, do you have anything to add?
No, we'll just look forward to CS 101.
Sounds good. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Katie. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much, Michael, and the others for the introductions. And with you, Katie, go ahead.